There's always this SEC bias when it comes to college football that, they were the best teams. They have the best conference, the toughest conference. And I'm so glad that this is happening this way. I really am, because they need to be humbled.
I do want to come back to some NFL talk here with you in a minute, but I do want to hit on a more immediate topic right now, which is college football. And I'd love to get your thoughts on how this new playoff format has gone so far. And do you think the right teams made it to the Final Four?
I love this playoff system. It's a true playoff system. How can you not like this playoff system? The old playoff system with only four teams was horrible and was not great. If you think about college basketball, right? Let's just say for a moment we're gonna completely get rid of all the other teams. And we're just gonna go straight to the Final Four. Like, you will miss out on so many Cinderella stories, so many comeback stories. So many opportunities for players to prove themselves and to show and be that last man standing, because that's what sports is all about. And it just, for whatever reason, college football was the only sport that didn't have a true playoff system. And so I love it. I think the first year was a success. Um, all the underdogs won. I believe the number one, number two teams lost. What, Oregon and Georgia both lost. So I think the playoff system is working. It's showing that there are some really good teams out there that are underdogs, and who doesn't like a good underdog story?
Right.
So I think this first season of college football playoffs has been great. I think they got the teams right. But Texas is going to play Ohio State. I can't wait for that matchup. That's going to be amazing. And Penn State and Notre Dame. Two storied teams, a lot of history, and two great coaches that are coaching at a high level, have really shown that their teams are built, for this. And yeah, I wish we had this playoff system. I really do. I wish we had this playoff system, when I was playing. Because I think this is fair. This is the way it should be.
Yeah. I'm curious how you would have reacted if you were in Arizona State's shoes and the non-call costed you a shot at beating Texas and making the semis. How would you how would you have reacted?
Yeah, I mean, I would be upset. I really would. And that's what playoffs is about, right? That's playoffs is about. You gotta elevate your play. You also have to do the little things right for 60 minutes, which is, the toughest part, because just the way that the games goes. Arizona State was right there. They had them. They were up by a touchdown in that overtime. And I think, the non-call is one thing, but buddy, we cannot give up a touchdown on fourth down.
Yeah.
A post route. You serious? Like, what are we doing here? We cannot give up a touchdown on fourth down. Like, if that's the one thing you can't do on fourth down. And I don't know what the safeties were doing, what they were thinking on that play, or if that was maybe the defense coordinator's call, but they just were out of position, and all they had to do was make one play. That's it. It comes down to, and that's what playoffs is about. It comes down to one play sometimes, and it's not always the way it seems, right? It looked like Arizona State was going to walk away with that game in overtime, and Texas fought back, and they made the plays when they needed to, and that's why Arizona State sitting at home right now. But yeah, man, I was hurt for Arizona State fans and just the way they played. I wanted to see Scatterbo, continue to play. I think he's playing at a high level. His kid's amazing. Love what he does on the football field. But yeah, man, it's tough. It's not easy.
Yeah. One of our reporters said this Final Four sends a message to the SEC that college football is not all about them. So I went to a Big Ten school. I know. And I covered SEC for a few years, and I've been able to experience SEC fans. Would you agree that there's some, I would say, arrogance from the SEC that the playoff, do you feel like this playoff kind of humbled them a little bit?
100%. Yeah. And rightfully so, because it's always been about the SEC. I felt like with the old playoff system, they were always favoring the SEC It was always it was always Georgia, Alabama getting in. No matter it seemed like no matter what their record was, they could have 2 losses, 3 losses. They're gonna find a way to get the SEC in. There was always this SEC bias when it comes to college football that they were the best teams, they have the best conference, the toughest conference, and I'm so glad that this is happening this way. I really am because they need to be humbled. They really do.
You're like,
And yeah, and it's Ohio State's Penn State, Notre Dame. I mean, the way that these three are playing right now, they could easily end up being national champs,
yeah,
in the first year of the playoffs. And so yeah, I love seeing the underdogs, um,
yeah,
the underdog stories. This is my favorite part about this playoff system.
yeah. Last college football question for you, but Ashton Jeanty, what are your thoughts on him, and do you have any advice for him when he tries to bring his talents to the NFL?
Yeah, man, I love watching Ashton Jeanty play. Great player. Nobody in this in college football, I think, has broken more tackles than him this year, and just the way he plays the game, I'm excited about him playing at the next level. Playing against Penn State was tough. And I think Boise got exposed a little bit up front with their offensive line. I just don't think they could handle those big boys at Penn State. Like Penn State just had a different level. They got a different breed of athletes up there, and Boise just got kind of beat up a little bit on the front line. So I don't think that takes anything away from Ashton Jeanty, though. I don't think
Yeah,
that means that he's not a good player. I don't think that mean that he anything like that. And I just think that they had his number. They didn't have enough weapons to be able to beat Penn State, and that's kind of what it is. Going forward into the NFL, I think he's going to do great. I think he'll be fine. The
yeah,
only thing I would talk to him about is I would love to see him improve his route running, and I would even love to see him, man, go back and return kicks. If you want to play in the NFL for a long time, you got to be able to do a lot. You got to be able to do more. Um, I played 11 years in the NFL, not because it was all about playing running back, but because I could return punts. I can catch the football out of the backfield. I can run routes like a receiver. That's important to the longevity of the position because there's going to be enough running backs that are going to come through this league that can run the football and get you 4 yards a carry. So you got to have something a little bit different. You got to bring something a little bit different to the table
yeah,
because running backs just, unfortunately, in the NFL right now, they're a dime a dozen, and running backs aren't really getting paid
yeah,
like they were back in the day. And so you really got to go above and beyond. You really got to have more tools in the bag than just being a running back. And
yeah.
so my recommendation to Ashton Jeanty would just be to this offseason, go work with receivers. Go find a receiver coach or go find some receivers, get some work in on your route running, catching balls out of the backfield, and that will make him a complete player. You want to be a complete player.
Yeah.
And then the returning kicks thing, to me, that's just getting the ball in your hands, right? A lot of teams, a lot of people will look at that as, oh, I could get hurt or is extra. But I always looked at returning punts and kicks as an extra opportunity for me to have the ball in my hands where I can go make a play. I could potentially go score a touchdown. And when you return kicks, it's about breaking tackles and it's about speed. And nobody does that better than Ashton Jeanty. So if I'm him, I'm looking for ways to get the ball in my hands,
I like
in the
that.
NFL.
I like that. Speaking of running backs in the NFL, it's like the elite ones are actually in the postseason this year, which is so cool. From Saquon to Derrick Henry and even Jameer Gibbs, who just went off for the Lions. He had 4 touchdowns the other night. So could you talk about these guys that are showing out? And is there one that you're most impressed with this year?
Well, I like what Jameer gives. I like seeing him pick up the slack for, where his teammate has been injured, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to note because, this is, I think, an era where you need 2 good running backs because of a situation like this. Because if one guy gets hurt, you need that
Mm.
other guy, to be able to carry the load. And had they only just been, a one running back team, they would be in a really bad spot right now. And so the fact that they've had these 2 really good running backs going into the playoffs has really helped them and carried them. And he's brought a lot of just speed, explosiveness to this offense that it's just a different level, when he gets in the open field. And so now you got to worry about him. You got to worry about, St. Brown. You got to worry about the receivers, play action, tight ends. Like, you add all that into there, that's a lot for a defense to handle, And then now you got to play in their stadium as well, on a road playoff game, which is going to be tough. That stadium is going to be loud as heck, So he's been great. Saquon and Derrick Henry have just they've brought back a lot of, I think, hope to the position because running backs, again, were looked at as a dime a dozen. You didn't have running backs going for 2,000 yards anymore like we used to. Chris Johnson, Adrian Peterson, some of these other great running backs going even before them. We just didn't see that, over these last, 10 years, it felt like. And now we're seeing that play out. And it's also part of the reason why the teams are successful. So I love seeing that because the running back position has taken a massive hit. And I think it's unfair to the players, to the really good ones. And we're seeing the really good ones carry these football teams. And they're a big part of the success for these football teams.
So the Kansas City Chiefs, they've always been the class of the NFL for years now. And there's been a bit more of a question mark next to them this year. They've had a ton of lucky breaks throughout the season. So in your opinion, do you feel like this is the year we see the Chiefs get humbled early in the playoffs? Or do you think Mahomes is going to go ball out? And then also, I want to know your Super Bowl prediction.
Well, Mahomes is going to ball out. He knows how to play in the playoffs. And he understands what it takes to win in the playoffs. So you cannot bet against Mahomes. But, I think that, this is a year where we haven't seen him play at a high level like he's done in the past few years. His touchdowns are down a little bit. Really, the offense overall is down a little bit than what we've seen over these past years. It's really been the defense that's been carrying them this year. They've been the story of I think of the year, for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it felt like those first few games of the season, Mahomes was still struggling, trying to find his rhythm, and the defense was just carrying them. And they were still winning games. They were winning close games. And so, people, there was this narrative of like, how are they still playing this good? And Mahomes is, not even playing his best football. And that's a scary thought to know that they're still winning and Mahomes hasn't even clicked. It ain't even clicked for him yet. So that's what you got to deal with going through Kansas City. On top of it being a very loud stadium and it's going to be very cold. So you got all these different elements going up against you. The one thing that you have to be able to do when you go into Kansas City, you have to be able to run the football well. So I think that speaks to Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry because when you go on the road in cold stadiums, throwing the football is not as easy. It becomes a little bit more difficult. That football is like catching a brick when it gets to freezing temperatures. And so you have to be able to run the football on the road. And that, to me, that speaks to a team like Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, the way he extends plays with his legs and their run game, and also Baltimore Ravens. And so these are the two teams that I think that can go in there and do it. But easier said than done.
Hey, sports fans, if you want to see more conversations with athletes and stars, check out these videos right here and be sure to subscribe for more from USA Today Sports.